Ironman 70.3 Chattanooga was last weekend. I had the fastest run split of the day in my first pro race. What can I say? I'm just built different. Overall, had a really good experience there. The real story of the weekend for me was that you got to do the best that you can with what you're given. Lots of different things didn't go my way, and you got to accept the things that are not in your control and do what you can with what you got. So we arrived there Friday at night. We drove what was supposed to be 8 and ended up being about 10-hour drive down to Chattanooga, and it was a gorgeous drive. We brought the cats down. They had a good time. They're great travel cats. They were super good in the car. Hey, Missy? Yeah, you were super good in the car. Yes. So the first thing that did not go my way.
So we are just out of Indianapolis, and we learned that the swim's going to be canceled for Chattanooga, which is unfortunate. Soup's unfortunate.
We got the email saying that they were canceling the swim, which I was really disappointed about. I was a little cagey last week about my prospects in the swim this weekend, but having tapered and seeing where I was on my last swim before leaving, I was flying through the water. I was in shape to swim pretty darn fast. Even if I hadn't been able to keep up with the very front people, I definitely would have been faster than a lot of the field by several minutes, which would have really drastically changed the race for me, both in terms of the outcomes and the dynamics. So yeah, I was pretty disappointed about that, but there are lots of bright sides. Having a background as a swimmer, I've raced swimming countless times, but I've only raced biking and running a handful of times. In the long run, it ultimately doesn't matter how I did at this race. It meant that I was almost definitely going to place lower than I could have had the swim been there, which was a bit frustrating for me, and that was the situation that I walked into, so it was a situation that I did my best to execute on the day. I do think they may have jumped the gun a little early on calling it. They were expecting an abnormally high flow rate in the river, and I'm not a meteorologist. All I will say is that on the day before and the day of, that water looked perfect to me. It looked like there was a mild current and not a wave in sight. Maybe what they could do is on Friday say, hey, we're anticipating this as a possibility. Here's the contingency plan if we do cancel the swim, and we'll let you know the night before. It is a triathlon, emphasis on the try, and so I do think they should do what they can to not cancel the swim. You'll notice they never canceled the bike or the run. It does seem a little bit like a conspiracy against us swimmers. Of course, the swim needs to be safe, but maybe we should do a bit more to not cancel it if possible. Thank you. Thank you for your consideration, the powers that be. So since there was no swim, we did a time trial start, which meant that the pros left 15 seconds apart. So all the men went first and then all the women went. And the order was decided by a random draw. So after the pro briefing, we went up one by one, pulled a ping pong ball from a bag that had a number on it, and that was the position in which you would start. So probably most people want to draw in the top third to half. You want to be in contact with the front of the race, maybe have a couple of people ahead of you, and also be in the thick of things so you have people to bike with. So that was the hope, that I would draw somewhere in the first half. I picked third from last, which is not in the first half. So that was also something that did not go my way, because biking is definitely my weakest of the three disciplines right now. I knew going into it that I still have a lot of work to do when it comes to the bike that just requires time and effort and persistence. You know, it's not that I'm not doing what I need to do, it's just it takes time to develop that strength. So that was definitely not an ideal place to draw. But again, you make do with what you got, right? And so I just had to do my best with the position that I drew. So after the pro briefing, we went back to the Airbnb, had some food, lay down, rested, watched some reels. I got my shoes, all my nutrition, all my bottles, etc., ready for the next day. I added some arch support into my bike shoes, which I really liked. Arch support was definitely a good adjustment. And then I also laced up my new shoes with my old laces because I didn't have a spare pair of elastic laces. I was up watching, I think it was the Jet Stars game that was on that night. I'm a bit of an addict when it comes to playoff hockey, so I didn't watch the entire game. I still got to bed by about 9. Since there was no swim, the transition opened a bit later. I woke up at around 4:50, so I had my normal breakfast of Rice Krispies and banana and honey, and my matcha, and some juice. And I took some more juice from the road, and we drove over to the race. Set my bike, I set up my nutrition, set up my bottles, all the stuff for transition, and then had plenty of time to do a bit of a shakeout run and stretch and all that kind of stuff. Used the bathroom a million times. And my start time was 7:33, so I started 5 minutes after the first woman. I was pretty nervous at first, but by the time 7 o'clock rolled around, I was feeling more chill and just relaxed into it. So then we got called over one by one and got lined up in the right order and headed off for the bike. Having peeked at who was around me on the bike, I knew the people around me had experience on this course and were pretty strong bikers, so I knew that going into it.
And we've got Mike and Kay all checked out in gray.
roughly 5 minutes in, the girl who started 15 seconds behind me caught up to me. I held onto her wheel for a minute or two, but then there was this like random guy who was biking down the street, and I don't have very good vision, and from afar I thought that he was another girl in the race, and so she passed him. I was trying to like, follow the rules and not draft, and then I realized, oh, it's just a random dude. So she got a bit ahead of me there, and then the girl who started last passed me soon after, held onto her wheel for a second, caught up to the two of them. They dropped me on a sharp turn. I knew the last two girls had passed me, and I was on my own, essentially. So I knew eventually some age group men would pass. Honestly, it took longer than I thought it would take for them to come through. There was one guy who came through maybe about an hour in, and then like one or two more, and then some large packs of very clearly drafting men came through maybe around like hour and a half through like the end of it. So that first hour I was just on my own in very exposed hilly road. So I was like, okay, this is a situation. I'll just manage myself well. I'll moderate my intensity, keep a steady pace that I feel comfortable with, and just make sure I'm getting lots of fluid and hydration in. And I did that. I was going slower than I wanted to be. I also just felt just kind of tired. I think that was probably a remnant of the cold that I had. I'd been sick for like 3 weeks before, and I wasn't coughing or sneezing, but the fatigue from a cold can just kind of stick with you for a little bit afterwards. And I just felt like I was just kind of tired, essentially the whole day. So I was there biking, knowing that I would be alone for a long time, just kind of tired and on this like really exposed hilly terrain. So I wasn't a super happy camper, but in my head I was like, okay, if nothing else, this is a good training day. Did my best to really think about my technique when I was biking. Like Chicago is flat as a board, and I was definitely getting got a bit by the hills, which is largely experience and the lack of training on hills specifically. I was just focusing on building speed over the hills. I think it definitely was the best that I've technically rode before on a race, so that was good improvement there. And I did end up splitting it pretty well. I think in my head I was like, okay, well this kind of sucks, but it is what it is, and I'm just gonna keep a good attitude towards it. So I think maintaining a decent attitude towards that was a win overall. Thing number 3 that didn't go my way was that I lost my nutrition on the bike. So I had all my gel in a bottle between my arms. I had practiced drinking with it, but my position slightly changed because I changed the stem of my bike. Because the visor was kind of in the way, I needed to sort of like do a bit of like a sideways drink. So I was having some gel, and I went over a bump and my bottle just went flying. I slowed down, I tried to look for it, I could not see the bottle. And so I was like, okay, I have to keep going. So I apologize deeply to the state of Georgia. I did pick up a couple of extra pieces of trash in exchange, so I'm sorry. So after that, I was like, well, okay, I've got a hot second until this next aid station. I had probably about 15 grams of carbs on me through the rest of that section of the bike, so I definitely ended up quite underfueled. I made sure I was just drinking everything that I could until I hit the next aid station, and then I yelled for gels, and a nice girl did a great job of handing me 2 gels, and I took those and I downed them. So ended up having about 50 grams of carbs in the last hour, which was not what I wanted to be doing. I wanted to be doing 120 grams plus. So came off the bike pretty underfueled and also kind of underhydrated. I think I definitely underestimated the amount of fluid that I need, so next race I'll need to increase the amount of fluid that I have. So I'll probably pick up an extra bottle next time.
Let's go, Mika!
I thought biking somewhere in like the mid 220s was reasonable. So in my head I was like, okay, just keep it under 230 and then we'll be able to salvage the run. So I did that. It was a 228, which wasn't quite as fast as I wanted to go, but given the circumstances, I think was all right. So I came off the bike in 16th, I think. It was a little weird because everyone started at different times. My legs actually felt decent because the last bit of the bike course is mostly downhills, and I was able to bike behind a pack of men for a little bit. So my legs were feeling pretty fresh, but I was pretty tired and underfueled and underhydrated.
What? Yeah, you're doing good. You're like 16th, 17th maybe? You're like 16th or 17th? You're like 7 minutes out of 6th and like 10 minutes out of 1st. You're doing good.
I was really open.
So on the run, took a caffeine gel pretty soon at the start of the run. I also had a caffeine gel at the end of the bike because I was handed it and I was like, give me whatever. Until the caffeine kicked in, I was just like tired. So I just focused on running smoothly and trying to make my run feel as effortless as possible. I really didn't push the uphills that much. I tried to keep the effort relatively constant and really take advantage of the downhills. I definitely underestimated the amount of hills that were on this course. I looked at the elevation profile and I was like, oh, that's nothing, that's pretty flat. It was not totally flat. It was pretty constantly a bit up or a bit down. The run, I really just focused on being flowy and keeping the run feeling as effortless as possible for as long as possible. I stopped and walked a couple steps at every aid station. At the beginning, where they have water and electrolytes, I would stop, grab 2 things of water, chug one, throw one down my body. Some of them I would also grab a thing of electrolytes. And I was very intentional about getting water down and cooling, because it was pretty warm, but it was super humid. And so I knew that cooling was going to be really important for the latter half of the run. I think I had 130 grams of carbs, and that was in the first hour. So I really made sure I got some carbs in pretty soon after the bike. And the caffeine also definitely helped. I really like being able to pick people off one by one. I really like that about racing, is like having people to chase. So on the run, I was like, okay, just, one by one, see a girl, pass them. But honestly, I was mostly just focused on my internal effort and moderating the effort so I wouldn't completely die in the second half of the run. So I saw my coach and my partner several times on the first lap, and they both told me that I was running faster than everyone else and I was catching people.
Let's go, Mika! You're catching up, you're like 11th?
I just kept at it, I just kept doing my thing. I felt like I had a bit more energy by the second loop, and I still felt like pretty good. Like I was getting a little tired, but I was feeling solid. You know that the end of the run is going to really hurt, and so I really just kept my focus on staying as flowy as possible. And so that was really all I was thinking about. I had a song that I wanted to sing in my head, but I kept forgetting what it was because my brain was just like not working. I kept being like, what was the song I wanted to sing? And I would like, what was it? And I eventually, I'd be like, oh yeah, is that one? And then I would forget it again like 10 seconds later. So I sang a bit to myself for some of it, but most of it was just being in the moment and just kind of being in the flow of things. I felt honestly pretty good until maybe mile 10 or 11. And the biggest uphill was sort of in the middle of the loop, right before you cross the first bridge. After that hill, my body just like flooded with lactate, and it was like, okay, here's the pain. So only had about 20 minutes of that this time, which was less than previous races, so that was cool. At that point, you just gotta keep going. You're so close to the end. Even in that pain, I tried to moderate the effort a little bit. Once that pain hit, you just gotta exist in it. You gotta tough it out. That's the time to just be tough. So I was just tough. I crossed the bridge back and then knew it was almost over, so I just sent it as much as I could down that hill into the finish line. In the end, was in a lot of pain, but I did it and ended up having the fastest run by, I think, about 40 seconds. And so I was a 1:25, and I think the next person was in the 1:26s. So pretty cool. Not gonna say I told you so, but I told you so. So I think it was a pretty good run for the day. My average pace was 6:32, and my average heart was like in the 170s. So it was gnarly, as it always is. But honestly, it felt a lot better on the whole than I have in the past. The shoes were great, honestly. They were super cushy, super comfortable. My only real complaint about the shoes is that they were a little bit hard to do a U-turn in, but that's probably a skill issue on my front. There were lots of various liquids on them by the end of that run, and they didn't absorb much weight at all. So overall, great shoes, loved them. Definitely helped contribute somewhat to the run. I ended up coming 8th overall. Given that there wasn't a swim, 8th is okay, and I still had the fastest run. So I knew going into it that I have lots of work to do on the bike. Nothing's changed. I think it was a step in the right direction on the bike, and I was pretty happy with the run. I thought I had somewhere in like the low to mid 120s in me, and I had that on the day. So that was pretty cool. Not many people can say that they had the fastest run in their first pro race. So all I'm saying is that you've been warned. Just wait till there's a swim. So overall, pretty happy. I've been recovering really well. The next race is in a month. Super excited. I think I proved to myself that I'm in a good place, and I'm making progress pretty fast. I'm really excited to see what happens once there is a swim. Really, really excited, honestly. Okay, also, the pool's been closed since I got that. It was supposed to be only closed on Monday, and then they closed on Tuesday, and now it's closed indefinitely. So someone doesn't want me to swim. Like, what is this?